And we welcome you to another edition of This Is Wrestling. Lee Versage, Zach McGibbon, and WrestleDream AEW review, plus a little WWE because I'm not happy with The Rock again. But Zach McGibbon, good to talk to you. How are you? Happy Thanksgiving weekend. What did you do on a Thanksgiving weekend as we sit here on a Monday afternoon, getting people back into their 4-day work week?
That's right. Happy Canadian Thanksgiving, everybody, as we record this on a Monday. It's good to talk with you, Mr. Versage. A lot happening. Yeah, I had family down here in the Quinte region. I didn't go to them. They came to me. And we had a great time. We were just traveling around the region. We went down to Quinte West, and we visited the National Air Force Museum there. It's my first kind of go-around of that museum. We went to the the Museum of Natural History as well, that's in Quinte West. And we explored a couple other spots. We traveled down to Campbellford. We went to the chocolate factory area and grabbed some chocolates.
You went to Campbellford?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Listen to the pitch in my voice. So
willingly, too, yeah.
I'm going to give a couple of quick jump. First of all, you talked over when I was allowed to jump in, like after 10 minutes. What else did you do this weekend when you did a full tour of the Quinte region? It's like, you didn't even let me get that in. So I will instead say to you that I did spend some of the weekend abnormally close to you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, as I have some family in beautiful Hastings, Ontario, not to be confused with Hastings County.
I was going to say
or township or whatever they call it.
Hastings County, you're correct.
I think it's county, which I know is much bigger. Hastings, the town, is very small.
Yes.
But do you know of Hastings, the town?
I am aware of the town of Hastings because we get a couple of people asking what's the difference between the two.
Which I understand. There's, sometimes when things are named, Canada, like you have to tell, there's a lot of different counties that sometimes have the same name as little towns. So yes, little Hastings, Ontario, but Hastings, Ontario is not very far. I want to say, depending on where you are in Hastings, 9 to 11 minutes from Campbellford.
Yeah, it's in that Northumberland County region, yeah.
Like, not very far. And I know that because I do want to say congratulations on a serious note to my cousin, who is the new head of HR at the Campbellford Hospital.
Oh, no way.
So I will. I don't say many nice things about my cousin Jessica because, she's pretty much a cheater at every family game we've ever played, and I beat her this weekend.
Sounds like there's still some heat there.
Well, there's, look, it's like when you go, and I'm trying to think of a good example. It would be like, okay, let's play Family Feud with WCW and WWF in the 90s, and there's Hogan as the lead guy and Eric Bischoff. And then on the other side, there's, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. And then you get down to the fifth guy and you're like, Disco Inferno's on the show. Or like, the Goon.
Abe Knuckleball Schwartz is on the show.
And look, I'm going to pump her up here a little bit, but basically Jess is, the highest. She's the life of that one side of the family. I'm kind of the life of the other side of the family. So yeah, there's a little bit of heat there. There's a little bit of competition. I would call it friendly family competition, but I got the best of her this year, like I usually do. I'm smarter. I'm way more intelligent and good looking and all those things, but sometimes she does get the best of me. And she's a very competitive, intellectual woman. And I want to say that she's turning 30, but she's either turning or she just turned 30. I can't remember. But anyway, she just got the job as new head of HR at Campbellford, and dream job for her, a dream job to kind of be back in the region after being a little bit on the police force in Durham and some other places. So I will say congratulations to her, just because you brought up Campbellford, and I just wanted to upstage your little chocolate factory visit with your family.
Very good. Very good. Good stuff there. Well, congratulations to her. I do get press releases from the Campbellford Hospital when I'm working. Oh yeah.
So you look for the name of Jessica Brandon, and when there is one, and Zach, I mean one, because there'll be lots of spelling mistakes and grammar. Like, if there's one, you better send it to me.
Oh,
like,
I'll make sure.
Full copies of every little punctuation mistake, grammar mistake, you name it, be in my hands that same day.
I will make sure that is accomplished.
Excellent news. Excellent news. But we have a lot to accomplish on this particular program as well, and it includes on Columbus Day weekend in the United States. I know it's a huge weekend for everybody. People even know it's Columbus Day on Monday in the States. I'm not sure. But WrestleDream. And we got a lot to talk about here, my friend. And I mean, to get right into it, sometimes, I like to start at the beginning and work our way up. But I actually think, especially with this show, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, this show has to me, a major moment. I think there are a lot of tentacles from the moment, but there's one really, really big thing that happens on this show. And it's not even the fact that the world title changed hands, because it did. Jon Moxley is your new AEW World Heavyweight Champion, but with it comes I'll call it semi-retirement of one of the greatest to ever do it, in Bryan Danielson. And that is the main event, as Bryan Danielson gets choked out by Jon Moxley. And look, we can talk about all the things, and we will. I want to almost make it separate. Talk about all the things that happen afterwards, and the way that this happened, and how it was all left, and was it a good idea, and how they got there. But let's just first talk about the fact that Jon Moxley is the new AEW World Champion. Bryan Danielson is retired, and that's quite a big change at the top for a company that, quite frankly, is struggling, I think, as big as they've ever struggled in their tenure in AEW.
Yeah, it's a big change. I know there was a lot of discussion. We had the discussion on the last episode as well about where they could go from here on this, and I was kind of leaning towards them probably putting it on Moxley because of the way that they had been pushing this group, this new not Blackpool Combat Club group that Moxley's leading. And they did it. They went ahead with it. They put the title on Moxley, and the match itself, I thought, was a really, really good match. I thought it was really good. And it obviously, as you mentioned, leads to the retirement of the full-time career retirement of Bryan Danielson. I think semi-retirement, as you put it, is a better way of saying it. I thought the match itself was really well done. I think there was absolutely that shock value you could see from Danielson losing, because it was something that, he had kept fighting and fighting throughout the match, and they did a bunch of different, high-level spots, and finally it ends with the choke out from Jon Moxley, the Bulldog choke, and Danielson isn't able to get back in, can't regain consciousness, and you saw the reaction from the crowd. They just witnessed the semi-retirement of Bryan Danielson, and I thought the match itself was well done. I don't know if you want me to kind of lead that into the angle that happened afterwards, but
yeah, I just want to stick with this for one more second.
Sure.
So let's talk about, for the second pay-per-view in a row, You can correct me on that. I think it was only the last pay-per-view. All Out was the last pay-per-view, correct?
Yep.
So when we discussed All Out, one of the things that kept coming up was the fact that they left the crowd in one of those, like, you had why am I blanking on what was before Swerve and Hangman? Oh, well, of course. What am I talking about? With the paper bag.
Yep.
And I didn't like the paper bag over the head of Danielson, and I thought it sucked the air out of the building a little bit.
No pun intended.
Yeah, exactly. And then people just were left with that sort of gasp and awe. And then Hangman and Swerve came in, and people are winning matches by injecting needles in the face. And it's like, okay, you kind of just did a couple of things on this show back to back that were like, it just leaves the crowd a little bit like, I don't really know how to feel. And then on the next show, they also leave the crowd, especially like you mentioned it, when he couldn't get up, it was just kind of like, there was a reaction, but it was more like this sort of gasp of the crowd. Like, okay, I might have known that Danielson wasn't winning and his career was going to come to an end, but they did it like that. And it was just kind of like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And I don't want to compare it too much to this, but I thought about it. And then I ended up reading that other people thought about it too. And I don't want to take all of their other thoughts about it, but I thought about the moment when I watched this. I thought about the silence of the crowd. I went back to All Out, and I'm like, that's 2 back-to-back pay-per-views where you just sort of left the crowd in this, holy crap, what did we just see? I think the biggest one that ever happened, and I did think about this at the time, it's why I'm bringing it up. I'm not comparing it to that, but when Brock beat The Undertaker and people were just like, what? That really happened? I kind of got a little bit of that same feeling. Did you get that feeling at all before the angle, but when the match ended?
Yes. I was actually going to bring that up too in terms of a comparison because it reminded me a lot of that actually in terms of the reaction to the finish, because it just it happened so suddenly. Yeah, right. I certainly felt that as the finish was being played out.
So is that an okay thing for you as a viewer? Because I'm going to assume, Zach, of course you paid top dollar to watch this.
AJ Francis, I paid him for this pay-per-view? I didn't realize that.
I think I said dollar, not dollar. But is it okay for you as a viewer who just sort of checked this out, maybe not paying top dollar, and then sort of juxtapose that to, people that paid a lot of money to go to the show or paid a lot of money in the US on pay-per-view to watch the show? Do you feel like that's okay? Like, is that a satisfactory way to leave people like that? My only thing about it is that they did that 2 shows in a row, and they did it multiple times at All Out in the last 2 matches. And then they did it again in the main event of this show. So I'm just going to leave that there. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's unusual, and that's what's happened in their last 3 like main event matches at pay-per-views. They have left the crowd with that what reaction. Is that okay?
I think back to the Taker Brock match, and at that time I was starting to get into, for lack of a better term, dirt sheet, reading newsletters and reading into backstage stuff. So I I look back on that match with more of a casual fan perspective.
Okay.
And it's still a match I think about. And the reason why being what it kind of led to afterwards. I know that there are still people to this day that when they talk about that specific match and that decision, that they still believe that was the wrong call in terms of Brock beating Taker for the streak. And saying, at that time, somebody else, if you were going to beat the streak, there would have been somebody else that would have benefited from it. Or you keep the streak going, and, we kind of see it now with Sting, where he won a bunch of his matches, and he was well protected, and you have this moment at the end where he has this kind of finale.
Right.
So with the benefit of hindsight now, I look back at that decision, and I think it was the right decision, considering where Taker was at in his career and how it did help Brock in the end. And that's kind of where I'm thinking this could go, where this could be something, depending on execution, that this is something we think about and say, maybe at this time we weren't sure. It leaves some doubt, but as it progresses and as the storyline continues, it makes a lot more sense. And people forget at that time, Brock was not being pushed that great in the WWE before that Taker run. It seemed like he was faltering out. And then when Brock beat Taker, it led to the squash match essentially with Cena and him going on this run where he's still that sort of character today, before he's, on the sideline now for all the outside of the ring stuff. But this is where I kind of look at with this story. So you certainly got a reaction. I think you have people talking about saying, "Oh my, I didn't realize it was going to be there for Danielson's last match." And I get what you're saying in terms of doing this sort of finish, a similar finish 2 pay-per-views in a row. I think the difference with the pay-per-view at the last one was, Danielson won his match at the last show. Then they did the big angle at the end, and that kind of set the stage for this new Moxley group. And I see this more as a continuation of that and really kind of setting the stage that, okay, this is the top heel group in the company. So I know it's kind of looking at it all, but
short-term pain for long-term gain.
Essentially, yeah. So okay. I actually kind of liked it. I liked the shocking element to it because sometimes, especially in wrestling, sometimes you get into predictability. And so I do like when you kind of change it up and you add a little bit of a twist with this, and it would be something that Danielson would want as well. So I like a little bit of unpredictability. So I like it right now. It actually, when I think back to that match with Taker and Lesnar, I'm thinking, man, Lesnar's going to go and do something after this. Like, they got to take advantage of this, was my mindset at the time when Lesnar won. And that's kind of my mindset here. It's like, okay, They're moving forward now with Moxley, and they are going to make this a thing. And I am interested to see where they go with this, because this is this is putting somebody over, right? This is something that Danielson, I could envision Danielson pitching this, and we'll talk about the angle in a bit, everything that happened afterwards on that. But in terms of the shock value finish, this was a definitive way to put over the heel group and take that group to the next level, so that you have this, you come out and saying, okay, this is the top storyline coming out of this AEW pay-per-view that we're going to be witnessing.
Right. So I want to hit on something that you said earlier, which I completely agree with. And without knowing, and we'll find out maybe at some point down the line, I have no doubt in my mind this is a Bryan Danielson thing, asking or telling them this is the way that it's going to go.
Yep.
He wants to do well for other people. And I heard him described earlier, and I think I agree with this. We talked a lot in the past on this show about world champions and people that, even if you're not a world champion, people that were on top of the business for a long time. Hogan, Cena, Flair, Stone Cold, The Rock. And what do all of those people, you can go back and name some others as well, but what do those people all have in common? That quite frankly, they were very selfish in holding their spot. A lot of those people made decisions, Shawn Michaels made decisions that were in the best interest of, they could sell it to you as the best interest of the company, but it was in the best interest of them.
Yeah.
And I think if you looked at the top 10 all-time greatest wrestlers, when you start to list that, I think there's only, I'm trying to think of who else. I think Bryan Danielson's probably the most selfless top superstar maybe of all time.
Oh, definitely. Of all time? Absolutely.
Like, the guy that rose to the biggest heights with being completely unselfish, wants to do the best for everybody else all the time, and still rose to the heights of some of the greatest of all time. The Undertaker, I think, gets a better rap sometimes because he's a good guy and he actually did put people over. But I think the streak is a little selfish too. But once it got going, it was a thing.
Yep.
And I get it that it became a thing. But Undertaker didn't lose a whole lot either.
The other person I was thinking was Bret, to an extent.
For sure. But, I think there are at least some questions. Only have to listen to episode 3 of the Vince McMahon documentary. But there are times that people don't think that Bret was completely unselfish.
Right.
Whether you agree with that or not, the perception is out there. I don't think anybody thinks that Bryan Danielson is really, really selfish.
Oh, God, no.
Right? And so I have no doubt that all of this, and let's get into the angle afterwards.
Sure.
And I can't believe it because a couple of times in the last few shows, I'm not going to pat myself on the back too much for this, but I almost just didn't mention it because it was kind of like this fleeting, I'll get to it, I'll mention it, but it's not like super important because I think it's obvious, but maybe it wasn't obvious to people. Like, I knew Wheeler Yuta was turning on Bryan the whole time. And I didn't know that it was going to happen at this show. I actually thought it would happen when they teamed together the other night on Dynamite. But you go back and look at everything that happened since the shock and awe in the last pay-per-view and them holding Wheeler Yuta back. Nobody ever touched Wheeler Yuta from that group. Like, nobody touched him ever. And it was like, okay, well, I saw this coming from a mile away. Now, I actually think that Bryan Danielson, so he puts Moxley over as this like monster new heel champion, and you have to deal with this group. He really puts Wheeler Yuta over.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes out with making and leaving not just Moxley, but an entire group, the most prominent group in the company, and what they're going to do from here. Everything that you said, I think, is a Bryan Danielson creation.
Yep.
And maybe you can get into, the specifics of the angle afterwards. Just about, like, do you agree with what I'm saying?
Absolutely, I agree with what you're saying. I think you could see it the way that it was played out as well, and kind of going into the angle. They brought back the plastic bag angle just for you, Mr. Versage.
Yeah. So, and just not to cut you off, but this time I understand it.
Yep.
When it was used, I don't like that it's the benchmark because I think it's too violent, too graphic. It's too much. But for the rite of passage for Wheeler Yuta to be the one to put the plastic bag over his head, it's almost like, as a group, Wheeler, you need to do this so that we know and you know that you're capable of it. And I don't think you could have done something with Wheeler to put him over any more than you could have with anything else other than this plastic bag, because you've already used the plastic bag and now you're using it again as this indoctoring Yuta into the group, and it's his rite of passage now to be in the group, and he's as hardcore as the rest of them and as bad as the rest because he did it too. I understand the logic in the plastic bag this time. I don't love the whole plastic bag thing. I think they could have chosen something else, but I completely understand why they used it in this spot. I just wanted to be able to say that.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so I'll just say it right now. I love this angle. It reminded me of an old school territory angle where they would get it for heat and try to establish their heel group. And through means like what you mentioned with the plastic bag, and being up, it really was like an old school territory thing. You had the baby faces coming out to try and make the save. And I thought it was notable as well. The people that ran out, Darby Allin, Daniel Garcia, Orange Cassidy, all guys that like you could build, all guys that you want to look for in your future. And of course, the future of AEW, Jeff Jarrett, also came out and helped out with this angle. But I understood why Jarrett was out there because he had the Owen Hart stuff. Yeah.
Same with me, but do we really need Jeff Jarrett out there, really?
But hey, if you wanted to really make it on the nose that, hey, this is a territory angle, bring out a guy that's worked the territories that time and Jarrett.
The point you're making, though, about Garcia and Cassidy, and especially Darby Allin.
Especially Darby, yeah.
Like, they are presenting them like they're the saviors now of the company.
Yep.
And again, I think Bryan Danielson made a whole lot of people a whole lot of money on Saturday night in the future.
Oh, yeah. And here's the thing. So I've not seen too much reaction to this because I finished watching the pay-per-view a few hours ago. But what I did see, one of the things I saw in terms of criticism of this was, Danielson didn't get his moment in the retirement. You kind of wasted that away. Mm-hmm. And I strongly disagree with that, and I'll tell you why. Okay. Because he did get his moment. His moment was at Wembley Stadium against Swerve Strickland in 100%. That final hurrah. So I 100% disagree with that. If anything, this was like the way that they kind of built this was, Danielson is kind of hanging on by a literal limb. He is just, he's got all the tape on his neck and they keep bringing it up and he keeps pulling out these victories, but he knows he doesn't have too much longer because this is his last run and people are going to take advantage of this. And then finally he just had no more gas. And not only did he have no more gas, they took advantage of the fact that he just didn't have enough anymore. And I thought that was tremendous storytelling. And so, yeah, like what you mentioned, I think they've set up something here because one of the things we've been talking about with AEW for a while is trying to get this next crop of guys over. Now they've got this TV deal. This is the chance for them to try and get this next crop over. They got Swerve Strickland over. Now it's time to get a couple more people over. And so they're looking at a guy like a Garcia. They did the segment on the show where Jerry Lynn expressed his support for Orange Cassidy. So they're trying to set up some stuff here to try and get this next wave of talent over. And I think they did just that with this angle. And like what you mentioned, Darby Allin was really kind of the figurehead of this. And then it was an old school territory angle in the sense you had the baby faces come out to try and make the save. The heels come out. It was this violent angle. This was very much a heat angle. And so I really like this angle, but I understand why people would be a little bit shocked by this because for so long, when it was one wrestling company in the States and it was WWE, all they did was heat angles. Like baby faces very rarely got over unless it was their chosen babyface, whether it be Cena or Roman Reigns, and they were forced their hand with Daniel Bryan at that time. Most of the time it was like, oh, heat. We love heat in this company, which is funny to say now with the way the company's run. And so there's still kind of that whiplash where they see an angle like this that's made for heat, where it's supposed to put the heat on the heel group. So I could see why some are a little bit put off by that. But in terms of getting what you want over, and in terms of getting the next steps over and trying to establish your storylines heading into the end of this year, I thought this was a tremendous job. I loved this angle. It hit all the right notes for me, and like what you mentioned, Danielson unselfish all the way to the end, and not only doing that, but setting up this next wave of stars to try and be that guy that overcomes, and setting up this heel group. I thought this was tremendous.
Yep. And again, I don't know when Bryan Danielson's going to wrestle again, but this is not the last time we'll ever see him.
Oh, absolutely not. He'll wrestle in the future.
And this happens in sports all the time. A quick NASCAR one, because I know how many people love NASCAR. So just one of the guys that's been around for a long time, Martin Truex Jr., is retiring at the end of this year. Okay. So there's 4 more races to go. He's not in the playoffs. His season, his retirement is happening. So he's 4 races until the end. And then they kind of came out a couple of weeks ago and it's like, yeah, but he's going to race in Daytona next year, which is the first race of next year. Like, I get it. He's still retired. He's not competing for a championship next year. He's not running full time. But already the guy who retires is racing in the first and the biggest race of the year next year in February.
Mm-hmm.
Feel like it's the same for Bryan Danielson. I actually think that at some point, when all these people, the Darbys and the Orange Cassidys and the Daniel Garcias get built up to a point where they are the heroes, you're going to see Bryan Danielson come out with them at some point down the line.
Absolutely.
But it's not going to be soon. Whether he if he needs next surgery tomorrow or next month, when he wants to be home with his daughter and all that stuff, you're not going to see him for a while. And he's not going to come back full time. I guess my question is, before we keep talking, do you think, like, it feels weird to me because Bryan Danielson is one of the greatest wrestlers to ever wrestle, period.
Yep.
But we're not going to talk about him today like the career of Bryan Danielson and nothing else matters because we're never going to see him again. We're not going to talk that way today, I'm guessing, because none of us believe that it's actually the end.
No.
And that's okay?
Yeah, and it kind of to, jump off of this point, if there is criticisms you can make about this angle, and really kind of the portrayal of this is, because of how non-committal they were, not going full board and just saying, hey, this is the retirement of Bryan Danielson. This is the end. They're kind of like, playing around with it a little bit. He's retiring, but he's not really retiring. You could make the argument there that if you wanted 100% maximum impact in getting this angle over, you got to go full bore on a retirement. Do it Terry Funk style, a guy that was, talking about giving. Do it Terry Funk style. How many retirements did he have, right?
Yeah.
So, there is that argument to be made. But like what you said, I could see him being gone for a while. Obviously, he gets the, the surgeries that he needs. He gets to spend time at home with his family. And then, the urge will kick in for Danielson where he wants to come back. And he could be absolutely part of this story coming down later on with this group and finally getting that, trying to get that one match to get that overcome Moxley. And you could sell it as a money drawing pay-per-view match in the future. There's totally a way you could do that. But in terms of maximum impact, yeah, you could absolutely make that argument.
And maybe I'm just trying to explain to an audience that probably knows, but if there are people listening, they're like, how come you're not just talking about the career of Bryan Danielson right now? I think because the career of Bryan Danielson is not over.
No, there's still more to go. And one last quick point before we move on, because I wanted to make this clear as well. Not every story beat has to be a happy story beat in pro wrestling. I think a lot of the intrigue sometimes is that the guy, the babyface, doesn't achieve what they want. And I'm so used to this when it comes to how New Japan built its stories over the years. It's how they became such a hot drawing company in the 2010s. Because Kazuchika Okada didn't win right away. It took time for him to beat Hiroshi Tanahashi and become the IWGP Heavyweight Champion. It took time for Tetsuya Naito to beat Kazuchika Okada so that he could become the IWGP Heavyweight Champion. between those stories took like 6 years to get over, but it got over and it made a lot of money for this company, for New Japan, and it helped carry them to the point where they're having shows in the States because it got so popular. So let these things play out. Not everything has to be a happy ending. You know, things can happen for a reason when it comes to heel segments and heel heat. So I also just want to make that point out there, because I also saw a little bit of criticism where it's like, oh, he should have had his moment. It should have been a happy moment, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes the best moments aren't the ones where it's the happy moment, because it can lead to a happier moment down the line.
And not even that, to the point that you made before. So there are rumors, and I don't know whether they're true, that Bryan Danielson had to be even talked into having the championship in the first place.
Yes.
But Tony Khan, like with Sting, right, had a plan, and I think understanding that he wanted to give Bryan Danielson a moment, he wanted to hail him, he wanted to make sure that he got his. And I'm going to guess, and you can jump in here, I'm going to guess that when the two actually sat down and talked about this, it was like, okay, Tony says to Bryan, I am giving you your moment. You don't have a choice. You are one of the greatest ever, and you are getting a moment. And I'm going to give you the championship. And Bryan's like, I don't know. I don't know that that's best. And I'm kind of at the end, and like, I'm sore. Like, no, you're getting a moment. Okay, well, if I'm going to get the moment, then here's how the rest of it's going to go down. And then Tony goes, well, we can do it like Sting. And then he goes, no, I think winning the title at Wembley in front of 50, 60,000 people is good with me. And here's how the rest of it's going to go, because I care about the future of the company. And Tony goes, okay. So if you're Bryan Danielson, I think that's how that conversation went.
Yep.
You agree with that?
I agree.
So if you're Danielson, even selfishly, we just talked about him being as, selfless wrestler in history. If you're Danielson and you can get one moment, which one do you want? Winning the championship in front of like 60,000 people at Wembley Stadium? Or after you lose the title, you get to stand up and hear cheers and see a couple of people crying, and you're in your hometown and you're like, okay, that's it, everybody. It's the curtain call all over again, where it's like, I just got choked out, but it's too bad. I'm going to go home now, but thanks so much. And the crowd's like, please don't go. Please don't go. And they're giving him a chance, and he can't leave. And there's a tear running down his eye as he's walking back up the ramp. And what does that ever do for Jon Moxley and his crew?
Exactly.
Even if you don't show that on pay-per-view, for the people in attendance, what moment do you think Danielson wants? How about winning a championship in front of your wife and kid and 60,000 people at Wembley Stadium? I'm picking that all day, every day. I'm not picking losing to Jon Moxley, but I can get up and wave to the crowd goodbye, and who cares?
Yeah.
Anyway,
this will be more impactful. Absolutely.
Right. I just think of if people are complaining, well, Bryan Danielson didn't get his moment. No, that's Bryan Danielson already probably got a moment because Tony Khan forced it on him that he probably didn't even want in the first place. Anyway, let's get to the point where I just want to make this from before, because I was a guy that really, Zach, I think you'll remember this. I didn't love Wild Thing.
It didn't make your heart sing.
Now that is probably the best you could do. You might as well give up right now the rest of the show. You've gone out on top.
It took me 274 episodes or however long, but we finally got there.
We got there. See you later, everybody. You're Bryan Danielson. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.
Waving to the fans, single tear down my eye. I did it, everybody.
I did not like Wild Thing. I hated it. Jon Moxley, all I would do is scream on the show that Jon Moxley is a bad mother, you know what. He's a badass, and he's coming out to this stingy, songy crap. Is he a heel? Is he a face? I don't know. Where does he fit? He wrestles in death matches in GCW and goes on independent so he can get his brains beat in. But Wild Thing, you make my heart, like, come on. Jon Moxley is where he should be right now. And I don't care whether it was Tony Khan's idea or Jon Moxley's idea or Bryan Danielson's idea, or I don't care how they got there. Tell me that Jon Moxley isn't exactly where he's supposed to be as the leader. Not even like Marina Shafir looks like a complete badass.
Yep.
And I pray to God, okay? I'm just going to throw this out. Pray to God, she does not go after a women's title right now. Like, I don't need her challenging Mariah May. And she doesn't need, because then if you put her in that match, you can't lose. And then if you put the strap on her, I don't think she needs the strap to be the badass, because she's already a freaking badass. I think she's fantastic in this role. I think they picked the perfect person for it, and I'm here for it all. I just think this whole group, except for Claudio, I could deal without Claudio.
I thought maybe you were turning around on Claudio, but
No,
I guess not.
I'm not, because I actually believe, like, here's the thing. I look at that group now, Moxley, badass champion, and like, to be dealt with. I don't know who can go through him right now. That's how well they've built him up from the Wild Thing stupid ass gimmick. And then, have I made myself clear on the Wild Thing part?
I just know you probably did not watch your Atsushi Onita tapes, because it's pretty much Atsushi Onita North American version.
Right. Okay. But Marina Shafir, badass. Pac, I actually totally believe.
Yep.
And Wheeler Yuta, I don't know if I didn't believe him. I probably didn't. And he was in the Claudio part for me. But now that they kind of put him through this young boy ritual and he's served his final class, it feels like his final class. And now he's graduated to where he is. I'm a little bit more in on him right now at this moment. Now, where they go with him, I don't know. And whether I still think that in a month or two or three, we'll find out. But Claudio's last on the list. But in saying that, this is what they should have done. And I want you to sort of take over here a little bit.
Sure. This
is what they should have done with, I don't know, hey, we'll do this like Jack Perry's going to beat up Tony Khan and the Elite, and then we have Kazuchika Okada, and I don't believe any part of that group. Like, they're just a bunch of guys. The Elite, and we're the EVPs, and we, like, no, you don't. And they should be, because other than Jack Perry and, you know, idiotic people that go out and buy his signed bomber jacket, I'm talking about one person in particular here.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
But
yeah.
He's not believable. And Okada's really, really good, but he's still a comic, and not really sure how the Young Bucks, they won again. Like,
yeah. By the way, Kazuchika Okada, one of the greatest professional wrestlers to ever put on a pair of boots. Just want to make that clear.
No, I know that. And I actually think the comic idea coming in wasn't a bad idea.
Yeah. No, I'm supporting your idea, what you're saying here, in terms of how they've shifted away Okada when it comes to his character.
I just think that they were trying to make a group with the Young Bucks and Kazuchika Okada. You can make there's an argument that the Young Bucks are one of the top tag teams ever in the history of professional wrestling. And there's certainly an argument about Kazuchika Okada is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. And then there's Jack Perry.
Yep.
But that's what this group should have been. And all of a sudden, it's like it course corrected. And now what the Blackpool Combat Club I thought was trying to be, but never quite got there, it's not the Blackpool Combat Club or whatever, but it's there.
Yep.
And good on them for doing it. And I believe that group because I believe that those people are badasses, and I believe what you're going to have to do to get through that group to get to Moxley, and what you're going to have to do to beat Moxley for that title, I think is very believable for me. Who's going to be able to do that right now? Anyway, I just thought that this angle was fantastic, and I know that we've kind of talked to death about it. Like, where do you think it can go from here now? Like, where do you think the next steps are for this group? As you said, I hope Danielson does this, and you want to see where the group's going to go because he's kind of made the group, but where do you think it goes from here?
Yeah, I think Moxley's going to hold that title for a while. I could see them reigniting the Moxley Darby Allin stuff in the short term. But I definitely think that he's going to hold on to this title for a while. I think he'll carry this title into 2025, and just continue to wreak havoc for a while. And you give the hope spots for the baby faces. You kind of give that tease of, oh, they're so close, and you kind of carry that over the next couple of months. And I think you could really do some good business with it, which is what they kind of need right now.
Okay, could I interest you in Darby Allin luking out a victory over Moxley and Moxley beating him for the title back within like a week?
Yeah, I'm in on that actually, because you've given that taste to the audience, and it gets taken away, so that you can get that tease going back again where Darby goes back on the chase. Because Darby's not a guy, in my mind, in terms of my assessment of his character and how he kind of comes across on TV, where you have him have a long title reign.
No.
He's somebody that if you put the title on him, you do it in a short-term sort of burst.
I know there was and I don't want to compare him too much, but I will a little bit, because they've both been, at least in big companies, they both were faces the entire time. There was nobody better at chasing, and I understand contracts came up and stuff, but there's nobody better chasing in the WWF back in the day than Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Yeah.
Like people loved Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Chase. Finally beat Savage in that massive moment at WrestleMania 3. Now that he's got the title, I know a contract came up, and he was maybe leaving, but just saying, like, I don't think he was a real long champion.
Nope.
And then they end up losing to Honky Tonk Man 2 months later. Sorry, Butch Reed, it was supposed to be you, but you missed your flight.
What a flight to miss.
Tough one. Buffalo. I wouldn't want to go to Buffalo either, but no, I love Buffalo. I shouldn't say that.
I was going to say, you went to Buffalo quite a few times for ECW shows back in the day.
Oh, the Burt Flickinger Arena. I actually went to Buffalo more for wrestling shows, but I also went for hockey games because, as a poor Toronto kid, couldn't afford to go to Maple Leaf Gardens, but Sabres tickets were pretty cheap.
Yeah.
So we'd always go down there for that. Went to the Burt Flickinger many times. I actually remember one of my favorite wrestling moments, not to get too far off track, was I couldn't believe sometime, oh God, I would have to find out the date. 96, 97, maybe even a bit before that. It was after the Outsiders came in to WCW, because in the main event, I don't even know who they were wrestling, but it was Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. And I was so pumped up for the NWO music. And they came out to Lauryn Hill. And I was like, oh my God, what's happening? What's happening? And then all of a sudden I realized this is actually pretty freaking cool. I thought it was awesome. And I remember being in this moment going, man, this is just incredible. But that was also in Buffalo that happened. So a lot of wrestling memories in Buffalo, New York for me. Point being is that Darby Allin is a chaser, but I think to make a star, you got to give the illusion at some point. And I don't think actually, like, if in a couple of months on a kind of a fluke thing that Darby beats Moxley and Moxley beats him back, I actually don't think it takes away that much from Moxley's kind of badass character. And I think you need to you put the seeds in that somebody can beat them, because when you make people, and I brought that NWO thing up for a reason other than Lauryn Hill, to the fact that the NWO just got to a point where you never, ever, ever believed that anyone was going to beat them. And it got super stale. And I think you can have badasses with an air of, there's a chance that someone could beat them. It's like how I go into Cowboys games. There's a chance they can win. And then the air gets taken out about 20 minutes into the game. And then, but then they hold on in the fourth quarter, come back, beating Pittsburgh, and but then they just get throttled again. They are my Darby Allin.
A much richer version of Darby Allin. Yeah, but nonetheless.
But anyway, I think Darby. Where do you think the group goes, and do you think it is against those guys, the Darbys, the Oranges, the Daniel Garcias in the near future?
Yeah, I think that's where it'll go. I could absolutely see it culminating in a year from now, because I hope. One of the big criticisms I had when they were doing the Ospreay storyline with Bryan Danielson is that I didn't think Danielson was on the sideline long enough to really get that angle over about how devastating this move is when it comes to the Tiger Driver. So in this case, I'm hoping he's gone for a long time, at least a year is my hope, when it comes to him being on the sideline, getting the surgeries, having the time with family, and then him coming back and having a match with Moxley, because that'll be the first thing that he will do once he comes back. So I could absolutely see this being this focused storyline for AEW for the next couple of months when it comes to your Darbys, your Daniel Garcias. I know Garcia made that challenge, and we can transition that into some of the returns on this show as well. Yep. I know that Garcia made his return earlier in the show and essentially made a challenge for the TNT title. But I could also see him being involved with this storyline too.
Okay, so then I'll skip at the other return. We'll come back to it. But I want to talk about our new international champion and Will Ospreay losing the international championship to Takeshita in a three-way match where Ricochet again is completely just, I think this is what his career is. Highlight film, be a part of things, but we're not really going to involve you in a lot of things that actually matter. I was going to ask you, do you think taking that title off of Will Ospreay is going to free him up to go after the world title? And what would you do when it comes to Will Ospreay, who is I think Moxley's a great choice as champion, but Will Ospreay is your biggest star.
Mm-hmm. I don't think it's going to be world championship quite yet.
Okay. So where are you going now with Will Ospreay now that he has lost the international championship?
I think he's going to stay in this mix for the international championship because of the association that Takeshita and Kyle Fletcher has with his Don Callis group. I think this is the story that he's going to go through first before he gets himself back into the title picture. I think this is one of those things where not only it gives Ospreay something to do, but this is a chance for them to establish Takeshita. And let me tell you, I've been on this show, feels like forever, saying if you're going to push the guy, have him win. So I got to give them credit because they finally had him win.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping this is a commitment to Takeshita, because let me tell you, this three-way match was awesome. Mm-hmm. I mean, what a shock that the talent level of these three could go out there and have a tremendous three-way match. So I saw a little bit of pushback to the angle when at the end, because Fletcher turns on Ospreay and it was happening during the match, but it made sense to me. I thought it was well executed, and you get the belt on Takeshita, and I think they're just going to move forward with a Takeshita Ospreay program for the next little bit, which, hey, sign me up. In terms of the matches that they'll do. I understand your points on, you want Ospreay back in the title picture, but I think this is more of a project. Hopefully, I'm right on this, but this is more of we're going to establish Takeshita here with his belt. He's going to have these great matches here, and then Ospreay will not be hurt by this. and he could eventually challenge for the world championship later on. That's my hope.
So Will Ospreay is not hurt by losing this title.
Exactly.
In fact, my first thought is, thank God it frees him up to do some other things. But I guess lost in there is it doesn't make as much sense for me for Kyle Fletcher to do this, only because I can't, like, he didn't win the title. He's not going to win that title now that it's in his own family's stable. And is this just rooted in jealousy of Will Ospreay? It's like,
that's how I took this story.
Yeah, and that's fine, but what's going to happen here is Ospreay is going to elevate Kyle Fletcher before he gets back into the Takeshita thing.
Yep.
He's going to feud with Kyle Fletcher. They're good buddies. I think Ospreay probably wants to elevate, like, another unselfish superstar, wants to elevate his friend who probably deserves it. And to be in a big feud with a big star will only help Kyle Fletcher. But the reasoning behind this one is like, so you're jealous of the best wrestler in the world, the one that, you won a tag team gauntlet match with, the one that, if you probably just went about it the right way, could have won the tag team championship, but you were the one that wanted to use the screwdriver and thought that was a good idea. I don't quite connect the dots with why this is a good move for Kyle Fletcher. Now, we know sort of behind the scenes, that's storyline wise. Behind the scenes, this is a great move for Kyle Fletcher because he's going to wrestle Will freaking Ospreay for the next 2 months and his career is going to skyrocket. I get that. But that's not quite how they're explaining it on television. They're explaining it that, there's a little jealousy and he's part of the Don Callis family. Like, what is Kyle Fletcher getting out of the Don Callis family? I don't really know because Takeshita just won the international championship. So I just don't know. Like, I would have put the belt on Fletcher probably before I would have put it on Takeshita. I understand Takeshita internationally can probably do some things, but Kyle Fletcher isn't American either. So I don't know. I just don't quite understand the reasoning with the Kyle Fletcher thing, but I do think that Will Ospreay is going to have to find that intermediate level of, okay, I'm not going to challenge for the world title because if I challenge Moxley right away, I'm their biggest star. Eventually, if they're absolutely nuts to not put that belt on Will Ospreay. But to me, the challenge is in a year of, you talked about Bryan Danielson. I'm going to say that it's Will Ospreay in 6 months deciding that he wants that title, and he's got to go through that whole list again of, he's going to have to go through Yuta and Pac and Claudio and probably have some incredible matches with Jon Moxley. And I think that's awesome. Like, I really do. I don't know where that leaves some of their other high profile superstars, but I felt when I watched this match that I was happy that it freed him up, Will Ospreay, but I don't really know what the plan is for him. He's going to get caught in this personal friend thing, and maybe he'll wrestle Takeshita, but he can't beat Takeshita for that title again. That'd be stupid for me. Right? Like, would you want Ospreay to just beat Takeshita in 6 weeks for that title?
No, I hope this is a likely title reign for Takeshita.
Right. So that doesn't, like, not a lot can hurt Will Ospreay at this moment, but at the same time, he can't just get caught up in a feud and never beat Takeshita for that title, because eventually Will Ospreay is your biggest star, and you're going to have to use him like he is your biggest star. Speaking of returns, you talked about Daniel Garcia coming back. I'm in to see Daniel Garcia against Jack Perry. I'm kind of done with this EVP group and the Bucks and Okada and Perry, and I'm done with all of it.
Especially with this main event story. I think that's what you're going to say too. Yeah,
exactly. So we got a new group that I'm actually into. I don't need an old group that I'm not into. Exactly it. So I don't know. Did you like Perry and Shibata?
I love Shibata in this match. This was the closest I thought that I could say this is the Katsuyori Shibata of 2017. I thought he was so good here in terms of how he delivered strikes and how he was going after Perry. I was like, yeah. And look, I'm a self-admitted, I love Katsuyori Shibata. More people need to watch his stuff in New Japan in 2017 before he had that unfortunate injury. Because that guy was a pro wrestler and knew how to do his role. And I figured with him coming back, I'm happy that he's back. I enjoy it when he's on screen. I enjoy his matches. I think he's a tremendous wrestler. But this is not the same guy that I had seen, in New Japan. And I didn't think I would see that guy again. And I don't think we did here either. But boy, did we get close. Because there were some great strikes that he delivered here. I think the finish might be a little bit of a turn off for some because of the way that went down, where Shibata puts the sleeper onto Perry and he's doing the bridge, but Perry kind of adjusts and he puts it into a pinning, bridges him into a pin and catches Shibata lacking with his shoulders to the mat. But it kind of set up everything afterwards when it came to the returns. So, which we could talk about here.
Yeah, well, let's get to it. Daniel Garcia returns. MJF comes out of Happy Gilmore. And then I had to read afterwards, after I watched it, I had to read someone, why would anybody ever run away from 105-pound Adam Cole? And I love the guy, but yeah, that's kind of right. So how did you see all this? Who came out ahead in all of this? Because I thought that before, and I still think that Adam Cole and MJF are big stars. Are they?
I would say so.
Okay,
especially
good.
MJF.
Good. You still think so after?
I mean, I wish he could pay me royalties for having to watch his 2023. And I wish I could, get my time back from watching his storyline with Adam Cole at that time.
Yes, I know.
But look, I'm not going to open up old wounds. He understood the errors of his ways. He's back to being a heel. There are elements of the old MJF before that are back here, so I'm not going to hold it against him. If I have to go through those pre-tapes again, Lee, how I feel.
No, I know that, Zach. I know that.
But having said all this, look, I was sitting here thinking, man, you could just abort mission on the Adam Cole stuff and I'd be A-okay. I could care less at that point if people were like, oh, there's a storyline that who cares? The storyline sucked. We can move on from it. But the way that they put this all together, I like it. I'm interested to see where it goes. They obviously built it up. They had, MJF attack Adam Cole, the last time for a segment on one of the pay-per-views that escapes me now. And now it's Adam Cole, ironically, roles reversed, where Adam Cole is now the babyface and MJF is back to being the heel, and we're going to reignite this program. So I am interested to see where it goes. I thought everything flowed so well. This was like a Paul Heyman style booking where one segment flowed into the next. There wasn't like a break in the action. And I thought that came across really well. So obviously the big returns there. Nothing will top the big return of Rico Constantino on the pre-show earlier on this show with MXFab. I mean, come on, you aren't excited about Rico finally going after Billy Gunn all these years later? I mean, come on, that's long-term storytelling, Lee. That's being done in AEW. But having said all that, no, this was great. I thought this was well executed. They've got a built-in storyline there with MJF and Adam Cole. As long as they keep this as a pro wrestling feud where it's a heated feud and they're trying to, both try and get at each other and I don't have to endure any more skits, then I am all for it.
Yeah, I am too. But I just want to believe that, especially for MJF, and I shouldn't even say especially, for both of these guys, I just want them to be back in the main event picture and kind of like what they're doing. I'm just really nervous about MJF was the top heel in the company. Now you got a new group that's the top heel group in the company, and you have the EVP group, which still are the Bucks and Kazuchika Okada and Jack Perry, that are supposed to all be heels. And MJF is still supposed to rise above and be the biggest heel of the company, when now the biggest heel in the company is the champion and is part of the biggest heel group in the company. I hope that MJF can get there, because I love that MJF. That is my MJF. But I don't know. He's not the top heel in the company anymore.
Nope.
Can you get back to it?
I think so. I don't have that same concern that you do when it comes to that.
Okay.
People go up and down the card all the time. Like I don't really have an issue with that sort of stuff. And I think a guy like MJF is talented enough, again, 2023 aside, still want my checks back, please, MJF. But 2023 aside, we know he's a guy that can be at that top level. I have no concerns when it comes to that, especially with how young he is. That's not a concern for me. Guys go up and down the roster when it comes to card placement and where storylines go all the time. So,
all right. So can Adam Cole?
I think so. The thing with Adam Cole, he's got to prove he can stay healthy and he could still perform at a high level. And if he does all of that, and we've seen it before with him, I think he'll be fine in terms of where he can get slotted. If he gets hurt again, you start asking questions. So that's where I'm kind of at with Adam Cole.
Okay. I'm already asking questions, and I love Adam Cole, but I'm already asking questions.
I will say this. This is a prove it, to me, the deal when it comes to Adam Cole. And look, injuries happen. It's unfortunate. And, he's had some unfortunate injuries from the concussion. And then, that unfortunate injury when it comes to the torn ACL or whatnot. But now it's like, put up or shut up for me when it comes to him. Because when he is out there, and he's putting on matches like before everything went down in the MJF storyline, when it all kicked off and they had that, I want to say time limit drop, but it was the match on Dynamite. That was a fantastic match.
Yes, it was.
So I'm hopeful we could get that Adam Cole back. And I think he's talented enough to do that. To me, he's just got to prove he can stay healthy. That's what it really is for me.
Okay. I want to believe you desperately.
I might even be too nice on Adam Cole right now, to be honest.
Yeah, I feel like you are, and I want, like I said, I really want him to succeed. Yeah, but it's a real prove it.
Yeah, I'm trusting in the talent because I've seen the talent. It'd be one thing if it was somebody else on the card, Yeah. But so I'm just relying on the talent, but I can understand why people would be a little hesitant. But I'm banking on the talent here to break through.
Okay. Let's go through the rest of the card quickly. What else caught we've talked, it's already been a long show here. Yeah. What else has caught your eye from this show? Your takes about Mariah May before are hitting with me now. I'm not going to say you're right yet, but they're starting to feel like it. And I'm still trying to understand the Young Bucks private party thing. And maybe you can explain that to me.
Sure. I'll start off with that Bucks private party deal. I think this is something they got to bake in the oven a little bit longer for. They had Amazing Red in a video package, which was cool to see for somebody that had seen Amazing Red wrestle on the indies and whatnot. I think this is a storyline that's got to be baked in a little bit more, and kind of grow. That's another team too, by the way, that was out there, at the end in that main event angle was Private Party. So that also screams to me that they're committed to try and make them an act. So it's, to me, I think this is something where it's like, there needs to be some more time. I saw some people arguing for Private Party to win, not necessarily for them, but more because the Bucks reign is kind of, more miss than hit. Yeah. But I think there's more you could do if you are committed to putting over Private Party. I think there's more that they could do with it. And so, how they got in there, really based off of a win that they had 5 years ago on like the first or second Dynamite. It's like, it's got to be a little bit more than that for me. But having said that, I thought the match was all right. I didn't think it was a blow away Bucks match like we usually have, but I didn't think it was a bad match either. I thought it was good. I thought it was a good match. I think there's still more that they could do with Private Party. And in the case of Mariah May, I am going to say something positive here about this Women's World Title match. I thought this was Mariah May's best match so far as Women's Champion. And I think Willow Nightingale continues to show how she is one of the top women's wrestlers in that company. She's had the best match with Mariah May in her title reign, and she's had the best match with Mercedes Moné in her title reign.
Yep.
I agree with that. I think that means a lot. I was hoping that Nightingale would win here, not because of the way the story was and I thought that was going, but more for I think it's pretty clear that they're going to go back to the Toni Storm stuff after some time off for her and do this Brian May Toni Storm program. I don't think they could do the title for that. I think that's a story that could be on its own without the title. And I just feel like this Women's World Title has just been in purgatory right now, where I don't think Mariah May is being elevated at all. I went on my rant about that a couple shows ago now, so I won't relitigate that. But I was hoping maybe this could be a fresh start and you can get some new opponents. And I know how we got there with Willow wasn't great. That's really been the thing for this company for the past while. But this was Mariah May's best match. I was pretty impressed. I thought that was actually a really good match.
So I need you to then quickly tell me a couple of things about this show.
Sure.
Number one, Jay White cleanly beats Hangman Page. Good idea, bad idea. And I saw some criticism of this, and I don't disagree. What the hell was Mark Briscoe doing defending against Chris Jericho with Hook having beat Chris Jericho and Hook just like, I want to know who the attacker for my father is. And that was, I want to know who the attacker for my father is for people who didn't hear me. Not on the card after giving up the FTW title, but Chris Jericho got a Ring of Honor world title shot after losing to Hook. And what was this even doing there on the show? Like I didn't get this at all.
Yeah, I'll start with the opener. I thought the match itself was tremendous. This was a really good opener. I really liked it. I was surprised about the result like you. I'm going to go with undetermined at this point. I'm not sure how to feel about it yet. I feel like this is something that's got to play out a little bit. This might be a cop-out, but because I actually think, okay, you're bringing Jay White back. Please heat him up and stop putting him on 0 hour. Well, yeah,
and heat him up.
Yeah, we've been ringing that bell for a while. So,
right. So I totally agree with that philosophy. It's just doing it against Page.
Exactly.
That's all.
Yeah. They caught him he caught him in his move and beat him. So I wonder if that's just going to kind of play a factor. Match itself, though, I thought was really good. I thought it was so well built. And hopefully, like you mentioned, this guy main evented a Tokyo Dome show. Like, we talked about Okada, another guy that's, they've been dropping the ball in terms of being able to utilize him to his fullest potential. When it comes to, actually, before I get to the world title match, I did want to say, I thought the best 2 out of 3 falls match between Hologram and Beast Mordos was really good. I really liked it. At the start, the crowd was quiet because both these guys, especially Hologram, in terms of being focused, was somebody that they weren't aware of. But they won this crowd over by the end. And I love Beast Mordos. He's turning into one of my favorite wrestlers on the roster, actually.
He's tremendous.
I think he's so good, and he's a great base, and it was perfect for him to be the guy against Hologram. And with the recent news that AEW signed a deal with Fox Sports Mexico, taking over that old slot from WWE, I think this is a perfect showcase and a great way to kind of showcase Hologram to a new audience. And if they continue to do some more Lucha stuff, because they've got some good wrestlers from the Lucha Libre plus the partnership with CMLL, I think there's a great chance that they could hit that market. But the match itself was a lot of fun. I thought they did a great job of getting the crowd into this, and I thought the work here was good. You could still see a little bit of greenness with Hologram because he's still young. He's 24, 25. But I thought it was tremendous. Darby Allin defeated Brody King. If you've seen Darby Allin matches with big dudes, you kind of knew what you were getting here. It's a lot of big spots. Still very good, just for the record, but you kind of knew what you were getting. What a shocker. I'm looking at my notes here. ROH World Title match. Chris Jericho lost?
Yeah.
He lost again? What?
Yep,
no, that can't be right, Lee. He's the modern day Hulk Hogan. There's no possible way he lost. That's what? No way. Mark Briscoe beat Chris Jericho?
Okay, the logic of him getting a title shot here is just ridiculous.
Yeah, they try to explain it where it's like, oh, he pinned Mark Briscoe in that collision match on the Grand Slam, but it's like, I'm not disagreeing with you. That's how a lot of this build has been. It's like, well, how did he get into that match in the first place? But the modern day Hulk Hogan strikes again. He loses.
I know. I just can't get over the fact that Hook beat him in a major spot. Gives the FTW title back to his dad. Somebody attacks his dad, but Chris Jericho's got a world title shot.
Yep. Yeah, I don't disagree.
Okay.
Now let me say this about Jericho too. Like, I joke about him being the modern day Hulk Hogan. Clearly, as you could tell with this another loss, losing to Mark Briscoe for the world title. But there are legitimate criticisms when it comes to the guy is not the same wrestler he was 5 years ago, for sure. And there are certainly concerns about that. And like what you mentioned with some of the other talents, it's like Hook wins his program, then he's not on this pay-per-view, but Jericho is on this pay-per-view. I feel a lot of that is falsely attributed to Jericho. It's like Tony Khan's the booker, and there's, as I point out a lot, there's 27 or so people back there contributing to storylines, helping out with what goes on the screen. Not one person there kind of raised their hand saying, hey, maybe we should put the guy that won his last feud on the television instead of the guy that lost the last feud.
You think?
Yeah, but apparently it's a really tough job, Lee, so you need a lot of people in the room to really come up with that decision. So all that to say, how he got there, not great. I understand where the Jericho fatigue could come in. Having said that, though, he is over. I think people, if you don't think Jericho is over, you're somebody that's saying, oh, Jericho's not over. I think you're just denying reality at this point. Whenever he does the hi guys, everybody says hi guys back. They watch the promos. They react to the promos. Like, just, I get why people would be upset, but don't falsify things and change things around so it could fit your narrative. So, all that to say, Mark Briscoe won. Modern day Hulk Hogan strikes again, losing another match. And I think that's it in terms of the rest of the card. I think we kind of got everything there. So
it's been a long show, and I know we'll still, Zach, I'm still going to give you your time. Talk about the TV deal and Eric Bischoff. It'll be like,
I am a caged animal right now.
I know, but you'll be Darby Allin. You're chasing. We'll see if you get there. But
well, you know what? If you want, once the deal gets announced that AEW is going on Fox or whatever, then I could do the Eric Bischoff rant, because that would be a special dog pile of that guy,
right?
And his quote unquote contributions to the modern discussion space when it comes to professional wrestling. So
you are so funny. You are so funny.
What? I'm just saying, apparently it contributes a lot by contributing absolutely nothing and just saying the same talking points and just saying things that appeals to a fan base.
But for now, Zach, we're going to end this because this has been a dream come true for a lot of people to hear us talk this long. So WrestleDream, there's a little bit where they go. I can't wait for Dynamite. I can't wait to see where they go. I do want to talk to you about the dwindling attendance numbers, and I didn't even get to the point of where this is all going with the WWE. That's another show about, Jamie Uso comes back and they need help, and they get left laying, and does Jey Uso come back, and what's going to happen for WrestleMania with the rumors that The Rock this week is not going to participate in WrestleMania 41. Do I believe it? I'm not sure, but I'll let you marinate on that for a little bit, and we'll talk about that because obviously there's time to be able to talk about it. This has been fun, Zach. Always good to catch up.
Yeah, absolutely, especially on a pay-per-view like this. Again, I thought this was a really good pay-per-view from AEW. for all the faults that they have, and there are certainly a lot. You mentioned the dwindling attendance and, the way things are going creative wise. The one strong suit they always have are pay-per-views. And I thought that continued here with this WrestleDream show. So.
Okay, Zach. Well, we'll talk about this as it comes here soon. But look, for everything coming up, I can't wait. It's actually getting into a great time of wrestling. And I think hopefully, we always say this, as you said, AEW continues some, they've had some bad stuff along the way here, but they always come through with some of their pay-per-views. And can they continue that? That is the big question of, what they can do here in the future and the little consistency. So we'll talk about all of that. Remember to check out our Vince McMahon separate part of the podcast, reviewing episode 3, also out now for our review of that, and we're halfway through the Vince McMahon documentary. You can catch that on This Is Wrestling. So a lot going on right now. For Zach McGibbon, I'm Lee Versage. Thanks again for listening to This Is Wrestling.